Season's greetings, everybody. I'm Joshua Orro, the Mustang Prince, and welcome to Mustang Prince Orro Reports. Well, friends, with this being the Christmas weekend, let's talk about A Christmas Carol. As everybody knows, this story by Charles Dickens is an absolute holiday classic. And after seeing The Man Who Invented Christmas 5 years ago, I can truly understand that Christmas can never be complete without it. Also, over the years, ever since the black and white film era, there have been so many adaptations of A Christmas Carol, whether being TV specials, stage plays, and live action or animated movies. And just recently this season, we received 2 streamed Christmas Carol films, one on Apple TV and another one on Netflix. Also, for those who don't follow me, ever since 2005, I've been performing A Christmas Carol almost every year. One time at school, while mostly with Musical Theater Village. Well, except for 2020 because, well, COVID reasons. And trust me, that Christmas was a really huge lump of coal for me. Also, I've had a lot of fun playing Mr. Poole and the Ghost of Christmas Present this year, and I'd like to thank Beth Warren for being my Secret Santa. Anyway, while my Musical Theater Village friends and myself love the Muppet Christmas Carol, there was one adaptation of A Christmas Carol that I've been wanting to share on my show for many years now. And trust me, after struggling with my schedule this season, I think it's a great movie to look at as my 10th season comes to a close. So, released on November 6th, 2009, the movie is A Christmas Carol. Duh! Now, on for the plot of the movie. Though London awaits the joyful arrival of Christmas, miserly Ebenezer Scrooge thinks it's all humbug, berating his faithful clerk and cheerful nephew for their views. Later, Scrooge encounters the ghost of his late business partner, who warns that 3 spirits will visit him during this night. The ghost takes Scrooge on a journey through his past, present, and future in the hope of transforming his bitterness. So, my thoughts? Well, ever since I saw it on November 17th, 2009, I had a really thrilling time, and it was a very special experience for me back then. And to this day, I still love watching this movie during the holiday season. But in order to explain why I love it, let's move on to Mustang notes. Now, firstly, this movie is Disney's 3rd adaptation of the novel, following Mickey's Christmas Carol and The Muppet Christmas Carol, and is the first of 2 films produced by Image Movers Digital. The second movie was Mars Needs Moms. The film was animated through the process of motion capture, a technique that was used in Zemeckis' previous films like The Polar Express and Beowulf. After making The Polar Express in 2004, Robert Zemekis stated that he fell in love with digital theater, and he tried finding an avenue in order to use this format again. He eventually decided that an adaptation of Charles Dickins' A Christmas Carol would be an opportunity to achieve this. Upon rereading the story, he realized that the story has never been realized in a way that it was actually imagined by Charles Dickens as he wrote it, as well as that it's as if he wrote this story to be a movie because it's so visual and cinematic. Zemeckis has stated previously that A Christmas Carol is one of his favorite stories dealing with time travel. I wonder if this movie ever gave him Back to the Future flashbacks. Anyway, in order to promote the movie, Disney partnered with Amtrak with a special nationwide train tour starting in May 2009, and they visited 40 cities, finishing in New York in November. Now, believe me when I say that the reason why this version of A Christmas Carol is so special to me is because I got to experience this movie at the El Capitan Theater in Los Angeles. And after seeing movies like the 1996 101 Dalmatians film, Disney's Tarzan, Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl, Brother Bear, and Around the World in 80 Days, A Christmas Carol would be the last movie that I ever saw there until June 25th, 2022, when I saw Lightyear with YMCA's New Horizons. However, unlike those movies, what made my viewing experience with A Christmas Carol extra magical and special was seeing it in 3D. And I got to share that experience with my sister Sabrina and several of my friends from Musical Theater Village. Plus, I thought the Christmas decorations inside the theater were really beautiful, and I thought the opening holiday spectacular which preceded the movie was really wonderful. Also, after the movie, me and the MTV cast got to see many pieces of art, like paintings, character designs, sculptures, and clay models. Now, let's talk about the animation. As I said earlier, this movie is animated with motion capture, and I'm sure you guys might already know what that is, especially after seeing James Cameron's Avatar: The Way of Water. But for those who don't know, motion capture is a technique where you basically have to film the actor's movements first and then splice the computer-generated models on top of them. In other words, it's almost like live acting in a CGI movie. Anyway, in my opinion, after seeing this picture and watching how the film was done behind the scenes, I think it must have been really difficult to act in a white room like that. But at the same time, it also seems like a very cool and interesting technique. Also, I love that the movie is set in London 1843, and I love how several moments make you feel like you're flying through the streets of this Victorian-era city, rather than being on a movie set like in previous versions. And nowadays, I find it funny that this movie was released a year before my first visit to London back in summer 2010. Also, I thought the movie did a good job at building up the horror elements, like all the ghost scenes. Plus, I like that this version features a prologue without a narrator, and in my opinion, not only was that scene interesting, but it was also very mysterious. Another thing that I liked about this movie was the score, composed by Alan Silvestri, and believe me, I love that the music was based on actual carols, including God Rest You Merry Gentlemen, Deck the Halls, O Come All Ye Faithful, Hark the Herald Angels Sing, and Joy to the World. However, I thought the best song in the entire movie was God Bless Us Everyone, performed by the classical Italian singer Andrea Bocelli, who 9 years later sang Fall on Me with his son Matteo in The Nutcracker and the Four Realms. However, while it did gross about $325.3 million on a budget of $175 to $200 million, due to the movie's high production and marketing costs, the film lost the studio an estimated $50 to $100 million, and it also sadly forced Mark Zorardi, president of Walt Disney Studios Motion Pictures Group and the head of worldwide marketing, to resign. And after the bombing of Mars Needs Moms, Image Movers Digital sadly closed down. Well, friends, that's all I got for Mustang notes. So, let's move on to the cast. The main character, Ebenezer Scrooge, is played by my all-time favorite comedian, Jim Carrey, whom was in Ron Howard's How the Grinch Stole Christmas, Lemony Snicket's A Series of Unfortunate Events, Blue Sky's version of Horton Hears a Who, The Mask, and the two Sonic the Hedgehog movies before sadly going into retirement. Now, while Jim Carrey is best known for his comedy, he can be a very serious actor when he wants to be. And in my opinion, I think he does an amazing job playing a greedy, cruel man who values money over human life. And ever since I saw this movie, I felt that his performance was like a mix of The Grinch and Count Olaf. Also, fun fact, Jim Carrey has described the movie as a classical version of A Christmas Carol, and that there were a lot of vocal things and a lot of physical things that he had to do while the movie was in development. Also, not only does Jim Carrey play Scrooge, but he also plays the three ghosts of Christmas too. Let's start with the Ghost of Christmas Past. Now, for those who don't know, in the book, Past is described as a being dressed in a white tunic and has his head engulfed in a bright light. And in the movie, he's depicted as a figure with a flickering flame for a head and a candle-like body, and he speaks with an Irish accent. Plus, he carries a flame retardant. Now, ever since I saw this movie on the big screen, I thought this depiction of Past was very clever and unique compared to the previous versions who depict him as either an old man, a woman, or a child. And yet, 12 years later after this, Netflix's Scrooge movie would have Past portrayed very similar to this one. By the way, for those who may not realize, the reason why Past is modeled like a candle in this version is because it symbolizes the light that people shine on their past in order to know themselves better. Also, while he takes Scrooge through his past, you can't help but feel a little bit of sympathy for all the rough times that Scrooge has went through, like being neglected by his father, the unfortunate death of his sister Fan when Fred was born, and when he broke up with Belle when he became obsessed with finances. Also, I felt that the part where Scrooge uses Past's flame retardant to extinguish him and then gets shot up into the sky before falling back home was kinda over the top to me. And now onto the Ghost of Christmas Present. Like most versions, this spirit is a jolly giant who's prone to hearty laughter, and he speaks with a Yorkshire accent. Also, he wears a green robe, has a wreath-like garland on his head, and he carries a flaming torch. Now, ever since I was little, Present has always been my favorite ghost in the story. And like I said earlier, I had a really fun time performing as him at Musical Theater Village, not just during this year's Christmas season, but also during 2021, 2019, 2018, and 2017. Plus, unlike most versions where he physically takes Scrooge from home to home, in this, he sits still and makes the room itself become the homes of Bob Cratchit and Fred. But when it became close for Present to pass, he becomes very creepy, twisted, and mean. Also, I thought the scene where he introduces Scrooge to wine and ignorance makes the moment where I do it on stage a lot more tamer. Finally, we have the Ghost of Christmas Future, or the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come. Now, this version of the third spirit is similar, but pretty much different to how he is in most adaptations. Yes, he's still a tall figure in a large black hooded cloak and never speaks, but he's not a physical being in this version. Instead, he's a shadow who scares Scrooge into the images of what may be his future. And in my opinion, this ghost is the absolute scariest one in the entire movie. And when I saw it on the big screen, I felt that the scene where Future first appears kind of felt like something out of Kingdom Hearts. Also, while the horse-drawn phantom hearse chase scene was pretty dark, at the same time, it kind of drags a bit, and it becomes very silly when Scrooge shrinks. Plus, I thought the scene where Scrooge sees his name on the tombstone and falls into his grave felt reminiscent to not only the scene in Mickey's Christmas Carol, but also a scene in the 1970s Scrooge musical movie. Lastly, I thought the moment where we see Future's devil-like eyes was the most terrifying. Next we come to Scrooge's deceased partner, Jacob Marley, played by Gary Oldman, whom was in Quest for Camelot, Christopher Nolan's Batman trilogy, the Harry Potter film series, Planet 51, and DreamWorks' Kung Fu Panda 2. Now to me, Gary Oldman does a terrific job playing as Marley, and like I said earlier, I thought it was very interesting and mysterious seeing his corpse during the opening prologue, and I thought Marley's ghostly appearance was very, very creepy. Due to him being covered in chains, he has eyes that stare out into space and only move when his head does. He's missing some teeth, and he wails in agony due to his punishment for the acts of greed he committed in life. Also, I think the part where Marley warns Scrooge to change his wicked ways or be condemned to a worse fate was a really fantastic scene. And the part where we see other chained ghosts was just plain scary. Another scary scene involving Marley was seeing his face on the knocker. And believe me, when I saw that moment on the big screen, it literally made me jump out of my seat. Plus, ever since I performed as Marley at school back in 2005, I always wondered what my face would look like on a door knocker, since I don't think there's a way to have that done on stage. But thanks to my sister's brilliant editing skills with Photoshop, this image might be the most likely answer that I've gotten so far. Next we have Scrooge's Clark, Bob Cratchit, also played by Gary Oldman. Now ever since my childhood, even though he is overshadowed by Scrooge, I felt that Bob was a very memorable character. While he is loyal to his boss, Bob can be a very sympathetic character. Due to him being treated poorly by Scrooge, he's also low paid and he can barely help his large family. However, despite being poor, I like that Bob and his family are still grateful about the Christmas spirit. At the end of the story, after Scrooge decides to change his ways, he gives Bob a raise and tells him that he'll do whatever he can to help his struggling family. Next is Bob's young son, Tiny Tim, voiced by Ryan Ochoa. In my eyes, Tiny Tim is a very important character in the story, and while he is sick, I like that he's still a cheerful child. And believe me, anyone who doesn't cry during his death scene in the future segment is born without a heart. Also, I like that Tim helps Scrooge become a better person, and I love that Scrooge becomes a second father to him. By the way, some of you may not know this, but it is claimed that Tiny Tim is based on an invalid son of one of Charles Dickens' friends who owned a cotton mill in Ardwick, Manchester. Plus, while Dickens doesn't really reveal in the book what Tiny Tim's illness was, it is possible that his sickness might be caused by renal tubular acidosis or rickets. Another character to talk about is Scrooge's nephew Fred, played by Colin Firth, whom was in Nanny McPhee, the Mamma Mia movies, Mary Poppins Returns, and the 2020 Secret Garden movie. In my opinion, after reading the book years ago, I felt what makes Fred another likable character is his love for Christmas, and that he gladly donates to charity. Plus, I feel like his personality has been passed down by his late mother, Fan, whom had a very close sibling relationship with Scrooge. Plus, I like that during his dinner party, Fred says that he feels very sorry for his uncle, and that he sees some goodness in him. The rest of the cast includes the late Bob Hoskins as Fezziwig and Old Joe, Cary Elwes as a charity gentleman whom my theater friends name Mr. Poole, Robin Wright Penn as Scrooge's sister Fan and his ex-fiancée Belle, and Fiona Flanagan as Mrs. Dilber. The film also includes actors like former Spy Kid Daryl Sabara, Steve Valentine, Faye Masterson, Jackie Barnbrook, Sammy Hanratty, Leslie Manville, and Princess Bloom herself, Molly C. Quinn. And now, on to my final words. Overall, Robert Zemeckis' adaptation of A Christmas Carol is a wonderful movie, and my experience seeing it at the El Capitan Theater with my musical Theater Village friends was really special. The film was not only dark and emotional, but it was also thrilling and a lot of fun. The story is very faithful to the original book. The actors all do a wonderful job while performing their roles. The motion capture was excellent, despite a couple flaws like a few emotionless faces and dead eyes. The music by Alan Silvestri is full of Christmas spirit, and the message truly shows the warmth and togetherness that the holiday season brings to us, and why it is important not to be alone on Christmas. Lastly to mention, I make it a tradition to watch this movie every year at Christmas time, and hopefully, once I gain a family of my own, I can share this movie with my children someday. I give this movie the highest rating of 100%. So there were a couple of nitpicks. So what? It's Christmas. Well, that concludes Season 10. Be sure to join me next year for Season 11 for more blogs, a couple countdowns, and my 10th anniversary. Mustang Power. And have a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and a Happy New Year. Oh, and God bless us, everyone.
Taste the gingerbread and apple dumplings.